Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and your house has just changed.
Okay, changed how? Like
Yeah.
structurally.
Yeah, exactly. But not dramatically. Like there were no earthquakes or loud noises in the night or anything. But you walk out of your bedroom and suddenly the kitchen is just like a little bit further away.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's unsettling.
Right. Or you look at your living room window and it's somehow widened to let in more light. And it hasn't shifted because of, settling foundations or old wood expanding in the heat.
So why is it shifting?
It's shifting because the physical architecture of your home is literally rearranging itself to reflect your hidden, unspoken emotional state.
Oh, wow. That is a completely surreal image.
Yeah,
But it instantly gets to the core of what we're looking at today.
she really does.
Because we tend to think of our inner lives as completely invisible, right? Like contained entirely within our own heads. But what if those internal realities actually took up physical, measurable space?
Exactly. And that incredibly vivid, slightly spooky image comes directly from the material we are jumping into today.
Yeah, it's such a great source text.
It is. We are doing a deep dive into this really fascinating combination of an astrological forecast paired with a companion narrative piece. It's called a StoryScope for the week of May 18th through the 24th, 2026.
Authored by Tarot by Hisaneri.
Yep, Tarot by Hessier. And the story itself is titled The House That Kept Returning. So our mission for this deep dive is to use this whole framework to guide you through this fascinating concept called emotional realism.
Which is, just a highly useful term,
Mm.
because emotional realism isn't about being cynical.
Right.
And it's certainly not about being detached or unfeeling. It's really about this radically honest evaluation of your own life and relationships.
So I actually want to ask you, the listener, a
Right.
question right out of the gate here.
Okay.
Have you ever confused chemistry with actual compatibility?
Oh, that's a big one.
Or maybe, you've got yourself settling for almost in your life, like almost honesty, almost affection, almost a future.
Yeah, we've all been there, I think.
For sure. Well, if you have, consider this deep dive your ultimate cheat sheet for avoiding emotional burnout.
Mm-hmm.
So let's unpack this. The week begins with this deep, almost gravitational pull towards stability, right? Driven by two major planetary shifts.
Yeah, so on Monday we have Mars moving into Taurus and Venus entering Cancer. And to understand why this creates such a profound shift in how we feel, we really have to look at the mechanisms of these specific planets.
Okay, so break that down for us.
Well, Mars governs our drive, right? Our ambition, our speed. It's basically the accelerator pedal.
Right, it's very go-go.
Exactly. But Taurus is an earth sign. It's slow, it's grounded, it's very concerned with tangible reality. So when Mars enters Taurus, it's like taking a sports car off the highway and putting it on a winding dirt road.
Oh, I like that. You kind of have to slow down.
You have to. You swap out that frantic urgency for deliberate, patient intention. It's all about building slowly.
So if Mars in Taurus is decelerating our ambition, how does Venus in Cancer change our emotional landscape? Because Venus is typically about connection and values, isn't it?
Precisely. And Cancer is the archetype of the home, of nurturing, and of, emotional protection.
The crab shell.
Yes, the crab shell. So when Venus is in Cancer, the desire for genuine emotional safety just overwrites almost everything else.
Really? Like it just takes over.
Totally. We suddenly care far less about appearances or, have a relationship blows on paper. We care intensely about loyalty. We want connections that actually survive inconvenience and require zero performance.
Which brings us perfectly back to that shifting house and the protagonist of our companion story, Mirabelle.
Right, Mira.
Yeah, so Mira lives in this fictional village of Bellwether. And she is someone who has spent years collecting those almosts I mentioned earlier.
Pouring her energy into the wrong things.
Exactly. She was pouring her energy into lovers who arrived like storms, like people who texted beautifully but listened poorly, people who admired her complicated sadness more than her simple joy.
And the underlying psychological state described in the story is so crucial here because Mira basically told herself she was just being patient, right? Like she was just being open-hearted.
Yeah, framing endurance as a virtue.
Exactly. But underneath that supposed generosity was just this profound, bone-deep exhaustion.
And because she lives in this incredibly perceptive house, the architecture itself starts responding to her burnout. It literally stops letting her pretend.
The pantry scene is so good.
Oh, it's my favorite. Her pantry suddenly stops stocking what the narrative calls aspirational food.
It's a very grounding detail and just a perfect manifestation of that Mars and Taurus energy we talked about. stripping away the flashy, unsustainable effort and focusing on, tangible physical comfort.
Think about your own fridge for a second. Like, how often do we buy those ambitious, aspirational groceries for the person we wish we were?
Oh, all the time. The guilt vegetables.
Yes. You buy 3 different types of kale, the expensive pressed juices, all those complicated meal prep ingredients.
And then they just wilt in the crisper drawer.
Right. Because when you are truly exhausted at the end of a long week, what actually nourishes you? Mira's house starts supplying real, tactile food. Bread that crackles when you tear it. Simple soup ingredients.
Tea she genuinely likes. Not that bitter herbal tea she thinks a wiser version of herself should be drinking.
Yes. It's forcing her to accept where she actually is, rather than where she thinks she ought to be.
Which is such a powerful realization.
But, okay, I want to push back on this idea just a little bit, because we're talking about recognizing burnout and stripping away the effort. But in today's hustle culture, isn't that exhaustion practically a status symbol?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Right. We literally reward people for how tired they are, whether that's at work or, and how hard they fight for a difficult relationship. Unlearning that seems a lot harder than just buying different groceries.
You've hit on the exact friction the author is exploring here. We absolutely normalize exhaustion as a metric of care or dedication. Like, if it doesn't hurt, we think we aren't trying hard enough.
Exactly. No pain, no gain.
Right. But this planetary energy and the whole concept of emotional realism, it's demanding deliberate stability. It's making the argument that emotional maturity isn't about becoming colder or building up walls so you're harder to need.
So what is it about then?
It's having the self-respect to recognize that burnout is not a personality trait. It asks, are you constructing something sustainable, or are you just addicted to the effort of trying to make something work?
There's a moment in this story that illustrates that beautifully. Mira is brushing her hair in front of the mirror, and she whispers to herself about a partner. She says maybe he just needs time.
And the mirror just rejects it.
Completely rejects the lie. It instantly fogs over. And the steam only vanishes when she finally looks at herself and speaks the actual truth. Maybe I deserve consistency.
That is the essence of Venus and Cancer kicking in, acknowledging without apology where your needs simply aren't being met.
That craving for solid ground is powerful. But this deep dive isn't just about settling into comfort, is it? Because the mental energy is about to accelerate dramatically on Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday shifts gears entirely because the sun enters Gemini.
Okay, so what happens when the sun enters Gemini?
This is where the friction really begins. Gemini is an air sign ruled by Mercury, so it governs intellect, communication, the rapid exchange of ideas. The moment the sun enters Gemini, mental stimulation just goes off the charts.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the schedule gets busier, curiosity expands, information starts flying at us from all directions, and, attention spans shorten.
In the village of Bellwether, this Gemini energy manifests as this electric, almost unhinged level of honesty and mental output. Suddenly, the local baker starts learning philosophy.
Right.
The butcher launches an unprompted radio show. Neighbors are writing memoirs about their aggressively ordinary lives.
Everyone thinks they need a podcast.
Exactly. Thoughts are moving so quickly that secrets are just kind of slipping loose.
And that speed is thrilling, honestly. It feels like waking up. But it carries a very specific psychological danger, which peaks later in the week on Friday, when Venus forms a square with Neptune.
Okay, let's break that down because those are some heavy astrological terms. What is the actual mechanism of a Venus-Neptune square?
Well, in astrology, a square is an aspect of tension or friction. It means two planets are at a 90-degree angle, so they're fundamentally challenging each other.
Okay.
We already established that Venus represents what we value and how we connect. Neptune, on the other hand, is the planet of dreams, illusions, and the dissolving of boundaries. It's the fog.
So when our desire for connection clashes with the fog of illusion,
Emotional judgment gets incredibly blurry. Longing becomes so powerful that it just overrides logic, and projection increases exponentially.
like wearing rose-colored glasses.
Exactly. This is the exact energy that makes someone ignore 12 obvious, glaring warning signs just because they feel like the connection is, different or special.
The story gives us a perfect vocabulary word for this exact phenomenon. Mira is talking with her friend Ivy, and Mira admits she's decided to stop translating people.
Translating people, I love that phrasing.
Isn't it great? Translating is when you take someone's disappointing, neglectful, or careless actions, and you mentally spin them until they sound like romantic intentions. You do all the emotional heavy lifting to make their bad behavior make sense.
It is the ultimate Neptunian illusion. You aren't seeing the observable reality of the person standing in front of you. You are seeing the emotional potential you've assigned to them.
Wow. You fall in love with your own translation.
Exactly.
The narrative contrasts two men in Mira's life to drive this point home. First, there's her past lover, Adrian. Now, Adrian is highly cinematic.
The tortured artist type.
Yes. He forgets her birthdays, but he remembers her obscure childhood fears. He's profound, he's intense, but he is fundamentally unavailable.
Right.
And then at the market, she interacts with Elias. Now, Elias is not cinematic. He sells reliable clocks, he drops a basket of apples, and instead of using the moment to flirt or make deep eye contact, he just sighs and notes that gravity is exhausting.
A very grounded Mars and Taurus observation, by the way.
Completely. But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Isn't that cinematic Adrian-style romance exactly what we are culturally conditioned to want?
Oh, 100%.
I mean, almost every movie, every song, every novel is entirely about that spark, that instant, overwhelming intensity. Isn't chemistry the whole point of falling for someone?
It's a vital question, and it's exactly the trap being pointed out by the source material. Chemistry is absolutely intoxicating. But chemistry is fundamentally a biological reaction. It is not a structural foundation.
Okay. That's a huge distinction.
It is. The danger is that chemistry often disguises potential as reality. A character like Adrian represents the drama we mistake for devotion. We get a massive hit of adrenaline from the unpredictability, all those highs and lows, and we confuse that anxiety with passion.
So we think the butterflies in our stomach are true love, when really they're just our nervous system saying, I don't feel safe, I don't know what's going to happen next.
Precisely. Now contrast that with Elias. Elias is steady. And the story notes that Mira is actually more frightened by Elias's steadiness than she ever was by Adrian's drama.
Why is steadiness frightening? I would think it'd be a relief.
Because steadiness requires trust. And trust requires genuine vulnerability. You can easily hide behind the chaos of an unavailable person because the relationship will never actually progress to the point where you have to be truly seen.
Wow.
But with someone who is just standing right in front of you, being reliable, you have to show up as you actually are. That is terrifying.
Okay, so if we are culturally conditioned to chase the Adrian-style highs, and we're caught in this Neptune fog where we're constantly translating people, how do we snap out of it? Do we just wake up one day and decide to be logical?
Rarely. Usually the universe has to step in with a forced interruption. Yeah. And that brings us to the influence of Uranus. On Thursday and Sunday, we see the Sun conjunct Uranus and then Mercury conjunct Uranus.
Okay, so if Neptune is the fog, what is Uranus?
Uranus is the great awakener. It rules sudden shifts, rebellion, systemic disruption, and just these flashes of undeniable insight.
Like a lightning bolt.
Exactly. When the Sun, our core vitality, and Mercury, our communication, align with Uranus, the quiet part suddenly gets said out loud. You simply cannot maintain the illusion anymore. The forecast advises to expect the unexpected and then expect it again.
It makes me think of like sitting in a dimly lit, incredibly romantic restaurant. The ambiance is perfect, the shadows are hiding all the imperfections, and you're just lost in the mood.
Oh, you see where this is going.
And then suddenly, at 2 a.m., the staff flips on the harsh, bright, fluorescent overhead lights.
Yeah.
The fog is completely gone. You instantly see the stains on the tablecloth, the scuff marks on the floor, the tired expressions.
Yeah.
It's jarring, it's totally overstimulating, but the clarity is absolute. You can't unsee the reality.
The fluorescent light analogy is perfect because it highlights that the truth was actually always there. You just didn't have the illumination to see it.
Right.
And the advice for this transit is crucial. Stay flexible. Plans are going to change. People might say things that shock you, but that redirection is highly intentional. It's basically a forced software update for your brain. It's a mechanism for clearing out patterns you've let sit still for far too long.
In the village of Bellwether, this Uranus energy manifests literally. The town's power grid starts vanishing and returning. People are wandering the streets, muttering about glitches.
Total chaos.
Total chaos. And in the midst of this, Mira receives an anonymous, unsigned letter. It contains a single brutal sentence. Stop confusing longing with recognition.
Stop confusing longing with recognition. If there is one core thesis to this entire exploration, that might be it.
It's such a heavy concept. What does it actually mean in practice, though?
Well, we often look at someone and we feel this intense, overwhelming longing for them, and we think, oh, I recognize your soul. We are meant to be.
Right, the soulmate narrative.
Exactly. But the reality is much harsher. We aren't recognizing their soul. We are recognizing a familiar pattern of unavailability. We recognize a dynamic from our past that we are trying to finally fix or win. We confuse the hunger for the meal.
And it hurts to realize that. In the story, Mira stands by the sea cliffs and admits that having this revelation isn't glamorous. It's mostly just
It
embarrassing.
really is.
Just discovering you've been volunteering repeatedly for your own disappointment is a tough pill to swallow. But she notes that the sea offers perspective, which is ultimately better than comfort.
And that search for perspective perfectly sets up the climax of the week's astrology, because the intensely personal realizations Mira is having about her own relationships are actually a micro-reflection of a massive historical shift in human consciousness occurring at the end of the week,
Yeah, so Sunday brings an event that hasn't happened in roughly 11,000 years.
which is just a wild time frame.
Wild. We have Uranus conjunct the dwarf planet Sedna and the sign of Gemini.
This is a monumental alignment, and we really need to unpack the mechanics of it. We just established Uranus as the planet of sudden awakenings and higher consciousness, but Sedna is entirely different.
How so?
Sedna has an incredibly long, highly elliptical orbit. It takes over 11,400 years to orbit the Sun, taking it far out into the Oort cloud, the darkest, coldest, most distant reaches of our solar system.
So because its orbit is so massive and so distant, it's not dealing with our, daily moods or minor inconveniences.
Exactly. Astrologically, Sedna represents deep, evolutionary ancestral shifts. It deals with subconscious pain, the things we bury in the dark, and the deep transformations that lead to our spiritual destiny. So having Uranus, the planet of sudden light and shock, align with Sedna in Gemini, the sign of communication, logic, and frameworks, means our fundamental societal frameworks of understanding are being completely rewired.
The forecast even mentions that the physical reality of this shift is so intense that between May 1st and June 15th, people might actually feel physical symptoms,
Yeah, that's really interesting.
like unexplained anxiety, heightened sensitivity to loud noises, even impacts on digestion. It's essentially the nervous system trying to process a systemic change, so they highly recommend grounding techniques.
It's the body keeping score as the mind tries to catch up.
Right. And there's a very specific thematic context provided for this 11,000-year cycle. To report strictly on the framework of the text, the author describes this event as a breaking free from patriarchal powers and the birthing of a spiritually empowered feminine voice.
And regardless of how a person might interpret that terminology socially or politically, the psychological mechanism being described is clear.
Right, the underlying concept.
Exactly. It's about systemic upheaval. It's discarding hierarchical, performance-based structures of power where you have to prove your worth through constant effort and moving toward an intuitive, authentic, and sustainable way of existing.
But I have to ask, 11,000 years is a massive scale. How does a daily learner, someone listening right now while they're commuting or folding laundry, even process an energy that ancient? Like, how does an 11,000-year planetary orbit apply to a regular Tuesday to Sunday life?
It's a great question. You process it by understanding that macro-level shifts only ever happen through micro-level crises.
Okay, say more about that.
The forecast makes a profound point. These evolutionary breakthroughs only happen after a crisis point is reached, a point where limiting mindsets appear to have completely won.
Like hitting rock bottom.
Basically, think about your own life. Where have you felt utterly defeated? Where have you accepted that this is just how it is, whether that's in a toxic workplace, an unfulfilling relationship, or just a deep insecurity about your own self-worth? That point of maximum frustration where the old ways simply cannot be sustained anymore is exactly where the breakthrough happens. The old framework has to collapse before you can conceptualize something better.
So if we bring these massive cosmic events, 11,000-year elliptical orbits, the harsh fluorescent lights of Uranus, the friction of Neptune's fog back down to the quiet resolution of Mira's story, it all kind of clicks into place.
It really does, because after the chaos of the week, after the power grid glitches and the brutal honesty of the anonymous letter, Mira's house shifts one last time over the weekend.
But it doesn't just change, right? It settles.
Yes, it settles. The hallway straightens out. The bedroom window widens just enough to let in the morning light. The architecture stops reacting to her anxiety and starts reflecting her clarity.
She stands in her kitchen on Sunday morning holding a cup of tea. And for the first time in years, the silence in the house doesn't feel empty or lonely. It feels inhabited by discernment.
It's such a peaceful image.
It is. And the narrative gives us this beautiful synthesis of everything we've unpacked today. It fundamentally redefines what a home is. Homes are not the place where discomfort magically disappears. Home is the place where truth stops requiring performance.
That is the absolute essence of emotional realism. Growing wiser isn't about building up armor or becoming harder to need. It's simply learning the shape of what can actually hold you without ever asking you to shrink to fit inside it.
I want to challenge you, the listener, to do a quiet audit of your own life based on what we've explored in this deep dive. Look closely at the situations, the relationships, and the ambitions you are pouring your vital energy into.
Are you buying aspirational groceries for a life that isn't actually yours?
Exactly. Are you translating people's actions, doing the emotional heavy lifting to ignore the reality of who they are? Are the people in your life meeting you where you actually live or where they expect you to perform?
It takes immense courage to turn on the fluorescent lights. It is terrifying to stop performing and to stop confusing chaotic chemistry with reliable compatibility. But the ultimate reward is a life that actually fits you.
Which brings us right back to where we started today. That surreal, slightly unsettling image of the shifting walls in the moving rooms. I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to explore on your own. If your own living space were to physically shift to reflect your deepest unsaid truths tonight, just like Mira's house, what room would change first? And what is it trying to tell you that you've been too busy to hear?